Hey there fellow exiles, welcome back to another video. So this is going to be a pretty short video and I'm basically just going to go over some changes to the build that I've made and my day one progression pretty much. So the first thing that you'll notice is that I am indeed in maps. We're currently in yellow maps and most of the build has been put together. Some of the gear was easier to acquire than I was expecting. Case in point, Wrathpith was a lot cheaper. This was only about 1.5 divines, and the same goes for the Ivory Tower. It was actually very cheap. I even managed to snag an enchanted one with effective defense modifiers for just about 1 divine. And yeah, most of the gear ended up being cheaper than expected. Probably the most expensive thing, which I wasn't expecting, was the Astramentus. This one cost me about around 50c for a decent roll, and a Cyclopean with a good roll as well is also decently expensive, so that's probably the thing I'm gonna get next. Outside of that, we got our tree set up. The Brutal Restraint was actually also quite a bit cheaper than I was expecting. I thought this was going to be like 3 or 4 divines on day one, but it ended up coming down to about a divine and a half, sorry. And yeah, for the most part, we got everything together. We got the Uber Lab done. Super nice, super sweet. Now, while that sounds fine and dandy, the thing that I was expecting to be bad, which was the leveling and the process to getting to these items, was indeed as painful as I expected it to be. So I highly recommend just leveling as something else and then switching into this later. However, I did decide to circumvent this by going for a Ghost Ride setup, and with the Ghost Ride I kept running into the problem of being stunned over and over throughout the campaign, which was incredibly painful, and then eventually I had to go for comms boots. And then the problem with that is I ended up with very little move speed. So if you guys were to level with something similar to this build in terms of tree, I would recommend just staying away from Ghost Ride, at least for my preference, if you plan on doing stuff like high star mapping. Eventually I did do a couple of sanctums as well. That's where I got a lot of my currency from once we had the damage for it. And the sanctums, actually, you don't really feel the stun because you don't get hit that much. However, personally, I don't think I'm gonna try Ghost Ride again. It's more just like a personal peeve. However, if you're gonna just run Sanctum, it's probably the best in terms of damage. The second thing you probably notice is that I'm now running Storm Brand instead of Cremation. So I did test a few skills on stream, and I'll explain why in just a minute, but the best skill out of all of the ones that I tested ended up actually being Storm Brand, and this gem is kind of insane. In fact, I think it's kind of sort of teetering on the edge of overpowered, and it's kind of the whole purpose of this video, is because this gem is completely bonkers. I'm going to showcase a map later in the video after I explain exactly why Cremation is off, but basically compared to normal Storm Brand, this is about 60% more damage, and the quality also adds about 20% more damage, which is, I mean, this gem is just nuts. And the downside is supposed to be that it only sends beams to one enemy, but as you'll see later when I showcase, that beam, that really doesn't matter. Your clear feels just as fine, even with just one beam. Mostly also because the activation rate is higher. Probably the biggest thing about this gem that feels good though is how high the cast speed is. It has double the base cast speed of a normal Storm Brand, which means to place my brands, it's incredibly fast, which makes the skill feel a lot better to play. Now, as for the second half of this, which is why am I not playing Cremation? Well, the initial idea was to run Cascade with Cremation so that I wouldn't have to cast it too many times. However, that was based on the normal Cremation gem, which when you run Cascade, all of the Cremations get placed very tightly packed together. At least that's what they did last patch. And when I swapped to Cremation with the Volcano in this patch, and I put Cascade on it, as you can see, Cremation spread out a lot. And while this is okay, they're not terrible for clearing, it's horrible for single target. And I'm not a very big fan of doing gem swaps and whatnot. especially when you have to gem swap in the middle of a map for a map boss, because that's kind of the situation I was at in terms of damage. I just decided against using the skill. The other reason that I just didn't want to use the skill was also because without Cascade, the mapping felt sort of lackluster. It felt sort of like I was playing melee totems, which wasn't exactly the most enjoyable playstyle. So yeah, that's why I've moved away from Cremation. Other than that though, pretty much everything is very similar to what the original plan was. I'm still gonna come down here. I plan on getting the strength nodes and then blood magic. It's actually where I'm pathing to next. Those nodes are ideal. I'm gonna update my goal POB for my day 2, day 3 goal. And I'll link that in the description so you guys can see exactly what the POB has planned. But the TLDR is I'm no longer pathing through the center because we don't need the skill effect duration, and I'm taking some brand nodes instead. More than likely I'm gonna drop this wheel just to have more points, and I'm gonna anoint arcane potency instead, so I can come up here and I can grab utmost intellect because I want the mastery for more strength. Other than that though, that's pretty much the entire build. I guess I'll showcase a map real quick. For the most part, my currency has been coming from me doing Sanctum and Heist, so I haven't actually gotten a chance to map very much. I actually did carry one of my friend's Void Stones with this setup. As you can see, I have an Ether Void Stone and an Exarch Void Stone. That's because I actually did Ether and Exarch. It took a few portals, but I ended up carrying them for him. So even in this state, like, the build is incredibly powerful. So here, of course you have to activate your coruscating and your bismuth at the start of a map, but this is basically how the build plays, and it's incredibly comfy. And as you can see, like I did say earlier, the one beam thing for Storm Brand, you really don't feel it. Your brands pretty much end up killing everything anyway. Having the reattach mastery inbuilt into the gem really rounds out that feeling of how the gem feels. In my opinion, this is probably, at least compared to all the gems that we used to have, one of the best skills in the game. I'd say it probably, in my opinion, classifies as S tier now in terms of its combination of just damage and utility and whatnot. And yeah, now of course I am rather over geared for the content I am running, since I got most of my currency outside of maps. So I'm one-shotting the bosses, but at least you can get an idea exactly how the build maps. As far as the league mechanic is concerned, I've sort of been avoiding the league mechanic, mostly because at early levels I noticed it has a lot of chaos damage, and right now some of my gear pieces are still really bad. For example, like, I'm running a replica Void Eye because my enhanced support is still leveling up, and I have no mods on my other ring is a Loris, right? And my boots are pretty bad, and so is my belt. My belt needs to be a Cyclopean, so because I'm still missing a lot of items, I'm also missing a lot of chaos res, right? I'm still at minus 31 chaos res, so league mechanics a bit too rippy, and I think I'd rather level up for a bit. Yeah, that's basically how the build plays. It's very comfortable. I'm only level 85 right now, but hopefully that rounds out a bit as we level up. Yeah, that's about it for the update video. If you guys want to continue checking it out, do drop by on my Twitch. I'll be streaming tomorrow as well from about about 3 p.m. IST, so do stop by stream. And yeah, that's the update on the build. Definitely try out Storm Brand of Indecision if you haven't, because this gem is completely broken, and it feels very good to play. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out, exiles.